last year, I posted a very short piece about the Lady of the Forest and her role as a spirit. Lately there's been a resurgence in reblogs of that post, which is all well and good, but in truth the theory itself was never truly expanded upon, mostly because it's part of something much, much bigger. The original premise of that post was basically that the Lady of the Forest was a spirit of the earth, because she says as much herself. People either loved this idea or hated it, and I'll be clear in saying that it's not a theory so much as just taking what she herself says at face value. Those that didn't like it seemed to be of a similar mind, that it messed with what we know of spirits, and therefore it couldn't possibly be true, despite the video evidence presented from her own mouth that the Lady of the Forest was never drawn across the veil. I let the issue lie with that. People are welcome to believe or disbelieve as they will, and that's ultimately fine. I'll go where the law tells me and try to draw logical conclusions as best I can from a large bank of evidence, and so it's an important part of the work that I do here because I always cite my sources in the transcripts of these videos. I'm providing ways for you to consider those different sources of evidence as well. I'm also trying to draw from a multitude of sources that are available, and that's why videos actually take me such a long time to create. But midway through this month, I was presented with an opportunity to express a bit more about spirits and the way that they interact with the world, and about how their natures are very much difficult things to really wrap our heads around, especially in light of all the information we were given that really altered a lot of things we know about spirits and their magic itself, from Inquisition, Descent, and Trespasser. I do genuinely believe that there is a link between the way that spirits become demons, the gang shades of the earth, abominations and possessions, and Darkspawn. This video is going to touch on some of those theories, though they likely won't get a formal discussion until after I finish the Dwarven Tige series. I did want to at least prop open the door a little though and let some air in here so you can think about it, and so we're headed back to the Brazilian Forest and to Ferelden today to take a look once again into spirits, the Lady of the Forest, blood magic, and Ferelden werewolf history. So, why werewolves? Well, because they're actually a neutral topic, at least in regards to some of the more central topics up for debate in the law. We have a great deal of information about them, and we have actually met them and confirmed that they exist. We understand how they impact the afflicted, both those suffering from the immediate infection and fully transformed wolves. We also know a little about how that curse might be started and cured. We have a very big dynamic space in the Brazilian Forest as a testing ground for a lot of theory, but we also see werewolves elsewhere, like the blighted werewolves in Blackmarsh, and we have rumours of them in other locations like West Hill as well. They are not a question but a demonstrated fact of Theodosian history within Ferelden, and therefore the conditions are set for a lot of controlling factors, which is something we don't often get to see when it comes to the messy business of things like gang shades, mages in the Fade, or the Blight in the Darkspawn. This topic is rich with actual information, and it is seemingly unrelated to all of those things. My goal is to prove that it actually is not, to use werewolves as a microcosm for much of Thedas at large, and to make the case that the worlds of spirits and mortals is neither so simple nor so cleanly distinct as one might think. Ferelden lore places the first werewolves at least as early as the Divine Age, with legends that Hafta, the first Alamari Terran, was the son of a werewolf since immortalized in myth as Dane, and whose heroics are still celebrated and acknowledged to this day from tavern names like the Dane's Refuge in Lothering, or the mighty River Dane that runs through northwestern Ferelden. Hafta certainly was real. He united the Alamari clans to drive back the Darkspawn in 140 Divine, and then he defeated the Chastened and the Avar forces and laid claim to the Ferelden Valley in 150 Divine. Half of the noble houses in Ferelden claim to be his descendants, and if the tales of his werewolf lineage are true, then descendants of wolves themselves, which is perhaps why they so value their Mabari hounds, who some legends say were bred from the wolves that served Dane himself. Dane's story was immortalized in the saga of Dane and the Werewolf, which has been recorded several times and by several different hands. The first tellings of Dane and the Werewolf actually date not to the Divine Age but to the Black Age 300 years later, making them sources that should be taken with a grain of salt. That said, werewolves themselves have already been a part of Ferelden lore for some time. The first year of the Black Age saw a resurgence of werewolves, and during the so-called lycanthropic plague, either Helia or Martha Cousland, our sources actually conflict here, united the bands to drive the creature back, which led to the formation of the Tourney of Highever, and the apparent extinction of the creatures not long afterwards. It's reasonable then for public fascination with werewolf stories to cause a resurgence of old tales. Dane and the Werewolf, while recorded during the Black Age and subsequently propagated into modern day, is likely a retelling of even older tales, as werewolves did unarguably exist. Dane and the Werewolf, much in the spirit of stories like the Norse poetic Edda and the tale of Beowulf, is basically that of a simple man-risen champion against a beast. In Dane's case, the titular werewolf is only one of the beasts he faced, and in fact is arguably the cause of his future successes, much as the death of Grendel was instrumental in Beowulf's rise before he goes off to fight a dragon. Interestingly, Dane is also rumoured to have tracked, with the help of wolves, a dragon called Fenshel, the Bane of Wolves. In Fenshel's lair he found the blade Euceris, which he used to slay both the dragon and the titular werewolf before passing it on to his son Hafter. Euceris is an interesting blade, and actually real. You encounter it during a fight with Shawweird, the rage demon, who's been bound within the Circle Tower during that part of Dragon Age Origins storyline. Its description bears a bit of a closer inspection as well. It still holds its edge, and has inscriptions on the blade. On one side it says, "You are the mirror," and on the other side it simply says, "Reflect." Dane is also tied to another blade, the Winter Blade, which is found in the Wending Wood in Dragon Age Awakenings. 2 Alamari brothers have been cursed and turned to stone. Trapped for an eternity, one of the brothers demands war and the life of a nearby magister who is still alive and who was the one who cursed them. The other brother says that peace is the only way, and that anger and vengeance will not free them. You will only get the sword if you choose to kill the magister, if you choose the path of anger and vengeance. Now, why does any of this matter? Well, the original story of Dane and the werewolf begins with Dane hunting in the woods for a stag. He catches the stag, but the hunt has caught the attention of a werewolf, and that werewolf comes to lay claim to the stag along with its entire wolf pack. Dane, knowing he can't defeat the wolves, thinks that he's going to die, but then something strange happens. The werewolf cuts a deal. "You've taken the stag from my woods and my pack, but nothing comes without a cost. Die here, huntsman, alone and forgotten, or take my place amongst the wolves as I take your place amongst man." Dane agrees, and the werewolf takes his form and life for a year and a day. Dane meanwhile took on the wolf's form and lived with the pack. But eventually there comes a conflict between the two, and this part of the story, which dates to an older telling, reads as follows. "And Dane stood his ground, the fanged beast approached. He saw the rage within its eyes, the wolf that once was there. The sword he raised, merciful death be praised, to the Maker went his prayer." There's a common theme that runs through the tale of Dane, the information that we have on his legendary blades, and the interactions that we have in Dragon Age Origins with werewolves overall. Vengeance and rage. And this has not gone unnoticed by scholars in-game, for Elden lore attributes the origins of werewolves to wolves possessed by rage demons and transformed into humanoids, whose bite would drive its victims mad into an unthinking fury, making them vulnerable to possession themselves, and a transformation into a feral beast. Other accounts corroborate that demons supposedly inhabit the bodies of wolves in greater numbers in Ferelden in the past. Another states that werewolves might be abominations of a sort. There is another tale, though, that explains the origins of werewolves from the human side rather than the wolf. In the Raw Faden Inquisition, we find a codex which the Fade itself remembered. The wolves, it says, were allies to men before Andraste. The Darkspawn have returned, and the hounds that they have so relied upon cower or else die to the Darkspawn. The Codex carries on to say, "I come to you, spirits of the old forest, I who built fences, I who came with fire and steel to drive you away. I come to you because fear has made my arms weak. I ask you for unforgiving rage to make them strong again. Kill the hound in my heart, and grow strong from the meat on its bones. In its place, give me the wolf." We have no idea when this codex is truly from, as it's one of a whole slew of entries in the Fade, all relating back to the Blights on through time, but it does seem to be invoking spirits to give him rage to fight the Darkspawn, to make of him a wolf. A werewolf? We can't say for certain, but if it was easy for Wynne and Evangeline and Anders to take in spirits, and it appears that it was, then why not a demon of rage to twist your mind to the thoughts of the wolf instead, to make a werewolf abomination? There's reason to suspect that this is in some effect true. After all, we have witnessed abominations before, and they are indeed twisted and warped creatures. More evidence comes from our codex information on abominations themselves, the monstrous creature looking as if a demon were wearing a man like a twisted suit of skin, spotted me and grinned. In fact, the very same codex also mentions that once an abomination is created, it will do its best to create more, which sounds very much like the propagation of a werewolf curse. We've learned over the course of the lore that abominations are rarely so cut and dry as all that, though. What used to simply be explained away as a demon crossing the veil and taking over the body of a mage, warping it beyond recognition into something monstrous, cannot truly be said to be the entire picture anymore. We have several in-lore examples of abominations that look no different from anyone else, from Anders and Justice in DA2, to Mythal and Flemeth throughout all of the games and the Stolen Throne, to Wynne and Faith in Dragon Age Origins, and later Evangeline and Faith in Asunder. Even in the case of Uldred, who was possessed by a pride demon, maintained his physical form until he finally brought out the pride demon to fight in the Circle Tower in Dragon Age Origins. But we do also have many examples of people who are corrupted and changed, and we also have examples of unbound spirits, like Cole, or the forbidden ones like Imshale and Gaxkang, who are capable of taking on human forms themselves. We even have other examples of spiritual possession of unlikely subjects, such as Storvaka the bear, Lord Wolseley the ram, Kitty the cat, and Hakon the dragon. Some even claim that giant spiders get their size from possession by spirits as well. Spirits do not solely possess people, but creatures of all kinds, and sometimes the things they possess are not even creatures but plants. And this is an important elaboration. In places where the veil is weak, spirits and demons find it easier to cross into the mortal realm, to walk as the undead, or inhabit plants or animals or people. With regard to inhabiting plants, this is sometimes a willing choice, and the spirits involved are of a friendly sort, such as with the Elder Tree, who just wants his acorn back in Dragon Age Origins, and who speaks in rhyme and poetry. Others, though, are forced into their forms and trapped. In the words of the same Elder Tree, "A spirit trapped within a tree, no mouth to scream or eyes to see, a cage of bark, a prison of wood, a thing of rage where nature stood." Most Sylvans are of this rage demon variety. Their anger makes them twist and mold the tree roots and branches to gain mobility, and then they rampage through the forest on paths of vengeance and wrath. Some, inhabiting the husks of recently burned trees, are even permanently on fire. In this case, locations with extremely thin veils, with high concentrations of plants and animals but low concentrations of people, are potentially deadly points of origins for creatures like werewolves of the wolf variety, and Sylvans. And if there's one thing we know about the Brazilian forest, it's that the veil there is very weak. We don't know the exact reason for this, though discussions with the soul trapped in the life gem in the temple within the forest gives us some hints that something dark and dreadful happened there long ago. The place has borne the hallmarks of blood and battle, from Tevinter forces in earlier wars to battles with the Clane. It is Solus who tells us that old places steeped in battle and blood and history hold incredibly powerful memories and spirits. This forest is hurting, and has been hurting, and that hurting is embodied when it comes to Zathrian's curse.
This is an old forest, mortal, and I am its spirit, its heart. I was not summoned from across the veil, but pulled from the trees, the rock and soil. I was bound to the body of the great wolf Witherfang, not possessed like a Sylvan or the undead, but bound into one being.
The Lady of the Forest is the spirit of the forest itself. She calls herself its very heart. Zathrian summoned her, in her own words, not from the Fade, but from the trees and the soil itself, and bound her with blood magic into the form of the great wolf Witherfang. Zathrian's motivations for doing this were vengeance and rage, the very things that we've already linked to werewolves and Sylvans both. The motivations and purpose of those that are summoning and binding spirits matters. We get this much from Solus in regards to his quest, all new fated for her, but we also see as much in the way that Cole is twisted throughout his entire storyline in Inquisition, until he either becomes human and learns to contend with the bad, or fully spirit again and lets everything go. We have Codex information too that corroborates this, which comes from Inquisition conversations again with Solus, though the Codex itself has little to do with him. The Codex Spirits and Demons tells the story of how a Magister summoned a spirit of love. When first I summoned her, she was a rose, unwithering, unchanging, and unthorned, a spirit of the purest love one knows, who never hated, coveted, or scorned. But as the Magister continues to summon her, the spirit of love starts to change. She broke my binding with a single word, and said this smiling as she clutched my heart. Though love I was, your passion's changing fire has forged this spirit into cruel desire. The impacts of the outside world do affect and change spirits, warping them and corrupting them. They are shaped by what they witness, such as with Cole, or by intent, such as with wisdom. When Zathrian bound the spirit with his blood magic and bade her track down the humans and kill them, it was his anger and his hate that fueled her. As with all spirits, there are two sides to every ideal, and these two are different. A spirit of wisdom does not look like a demon of pride. A spirit of compassion looks nothing like fear. A spirit of the forest, serene and beautiful, looks nothing like the wolf Witherfang, vicious and bestial. The world of Thedas offers some insight into the Dalish point of view regarding Zathrian's magic. Another of the Dalish keepers, Keeper Elanta, says that Zathrian's magic was a crime against nature itself, that he bound his soul to the spirit through manipulation and blood, and that his manipulation was of such strength and hatred that it not only killed, but also infected, spreading more hatred, spreading more anger. We see this in the way the Dalish are suffering of this curse in the Brazilian forest. We meet Deniala, who dies of it, and those that survive are permanently changed, angry, fierce things. We see it as well in the sheer number of Sylvans that litter parts of the Brazilian forest, in a place where the veil is so thin, where the spirit of the forest itself has been twisted into a beast. Other spirits have little chance. They too fall to corruption, and the entire forest comes alive with rage. But the spirit of the forest is also their salvation. For as much as she represents all that is wild and cruel as Witherfang, she is also the peaceful serenity of the lady, who tamed the werewolves, and as we are told by Swiftrunner, gave them their names. Names are another important concept to touch upon here. Spirits and their demonic aspects are ideas made incarnate. A name fixes that idea into a solid form. Solus tells us spirits are born in places where ideas are strong enough, and the Avar have rituals to rebirth spirits that go on for up to a year of concentration and mourning. The Lady of the Forest was conjured up from the soils and the trees and the grass, birthed from the forest itself, its very heart, and it is the heart of Witherfang that Zathrian asks you to fetch in order to cure the disease. If you do this, you obtain a necklace, the heart of Witherfang, whose description is an intriguing one. It bestows a strange sense of peace on the wearer, while the outside suffers disquiet nights and unfamiliar sounds from the dark periphery. This is the true heart of the darkness of the forest, protective and angry and defensive, as Zathrian himself was, but peaceful to those it admits under its protection, like the lady does with the werewolves that she brings in. This duality brings us back to Dane and his swords, the Winter Blade, which can only be obtained through vengeance, and Euceris, who chooses instead a simple reminder. You are the mirror, reflect. The werewolves are the mirrors of the anger and rage, bodies warped to reflect that ferocity, with the hatred and vitriol so sharp and so deep it is infectious and spreads and sometimes kills. The werewolf in Dane and the werewolf is no mere wolf, but a cunning beast, seeking a life beyond the wolf pack, which it will happily steal from Dane himself, and who, in the manner of most demons we meet up to and including Imshale, just wants to cut a bargain. Even the Lady of the Forest in her darker moments cuts a bargain, bartering the lives of Zathrian's clan for Zathrian's own. Spirits and demons, regardless of their origins, the Fade or the forests and the earth, are very similar, and they touch far more than we think. If they can twist and warp and change living beings, plants and people and creatures, whether such was their intention or not. This is not limited solely to abominations, but to werewolves, and arguably elsewhere as well. After all, there is another very important infectious disease in Thedas with the power to corrupt the mind and twist the body, to spread across all manner of living things, and the ability to change a landscape around it. The werewolves are only one way that spirits can impact the world around them. The fact that there might be others should not be discounted. That's it for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed this month's video. I know there's a lot of bigger ideas at play here, but this should serve to open up some of the doors and get a few people thinking. If people want to know more about this idea, do feel free to stop by my Tumblr or request that this be expanded upon next month. There is a lot of mystery in Thedas to cover, and it's not possible to do it all at once without things clashing from time to time. So, on that note, special thanks to my Patreon supporters, without whom videos like this would not be possible. And if you like this content and want to see more, please consider supporting me. Thank you!